So what we're proposing, following the speech that some of you may have heard that I gave with Stuart Pavers at CatEx last month, we had a discussion with Jane about potentially setting up a channel for CatEx members. What this allows us to do is, if you're setting up a TV channel on your own, typically you have 3-year contracts that you have to sign into for bandwidth and play out and all these rather heavy expenses. If it doesn't work out, then you're tied into the thing, it's a bit of a nightmare, etc. So we come up, and by the way, that's what Pavers have done. Pavers have taken a big risk. They've gone in there. They really invested a lot of money in the whole thing, and thank God it has worked. But effectively, what we wanted to do was offer something to CatEx members that allowed them to try out if home shopping was going to work for them in the format that we've done for Pavers TV, and it wasn't going to cost the earth. That was the kind of central format. Now what we've done is, as a company, the broadcast house will effectively take on those heavy contracts and resell bits of those to you. So effectively you'll be leasing tenants at this time, but what we want to do is allow you to roll on if it works out. So it's not fair that you try it for 3 to 6 months, find it's a great success, you won't allow it anymore. And what we want to do also is allow the founding members to have that option. So there is a kind of benefit to being in at the ground, and that if it does work, which I strongly suspect it will, I see, the same as Jane before, I can't see any reason why it shouldn't work. If we could get it to work for Pavers and you're using your best products, it would be seem bizarre to me that it wouldn't work. But obviously we can't guarantee success, but we strongly believe it will work. So just to talk about the format of the channel very briefly, and it will become clear when we show Pavers. It's effectively we want to establish a new as-live shopping channel on Sky Digital. Sky Digital, as you probably know, has about penetration to 10 million homes, so about half the population watch TV on Sky. And the channel launch provisional date is October the 1st. That can move, we're not absolutely wedded to that. The reason why we thought that was a good idea was because we're talking about 3 or 6 month contracts, and obviously October through to Christmas for most of you sitting, it will be the best time of year to be selling stuff. That's not everyone, but that's what we thought. The channel will run, and we know from the sales that we're getting from Pavers. My background, by the way, before I did this was, which is relevant to this, is that I was commercial director at JML for many years. My father is John Mills, so I'm rather unusually a client that then became an agent to work with the guys at Specialist Words. So I've set up 6 shopping channels before we did the Pavers one. So this is not something that was kind of a new thing for me. But what we do know from that experience, certainly with Pavers, is the only time that there are any sales of magnitude is between 8 and 10 PM. So that's when we're saying that the channel will be live from. At 10 PM it just falls off a cliff, and you get the odd kind of, to be honest with you, kind of inebriated person 3 in the morning buying a pair of boots, that kind of thing. But it's kind of very, very, overnight will take a couple £100, it's nothing. So it's not worth the running costs and it's not worth the sales. But Pavers, just so you know, do run 24 hours a day. You turn on 3 o'clock in the morning, there is content and it looks like it's live. One of the things we're looking to do, and again this is all very open for discussion, is obviously looking at 5 complementary CatEx companies. I don't think we can have 5 shoe brands or 5 horticulture companies or 5 of anything. We want to look for 5 companies that kind of show what CatEx is about, because ultimately this is a CatEx channel. Again, completely undecided what those will be. We've come up with some proposed product categories, which as you can see there will be flowers, gifts, quality meats, and collectibles, literature and wine. Again, none of those are decided, it's all very kind of up in the air. So effectively what we're doing is it's a kind of pitch to you really today, as you can probably tell, and then we're going to be pitching again on the 20th, and then hopefully we're going to get, of that, 5 companies would be the ideal who want to commit for 6 months. That's the ideal what we're looking for. If that doesn't happen, by the way, we're also quite open to do smaller amounts of hours potentially, but I'll come into the difficulties around that, because it's not quite as straightforward as it may look. And again, we haven't even got a name for the TV channel. At the moment, we were thinking of things like quality products, the gifting channel, maybe the CatEx channel. We're completely open to that. The way that the decision making will be done is not by the broadcast house exclusively. It's really done in conjunction with CatEx. So there's not a kind of set criteria in terms of how we're going to look at companies. It's also important from our point of view that we're dealing with companies that are creditworthy. There is an expense in this proposal, and we need to make sure that we're dealing with companies that can pay their bills. So that's the kind of from our point of view, because we are the ones taking the financial risk, the broadcast house. It's important that everyone realises that. It's not, if this channel, if we don't, take on the contracts to look at the channel, it doesn't happen. So we need to make sure that we're all dealing in a partnership. One of the issues also is, for example, if we did have 5 companies, We'd like to probably have kind of management meetings with those 5 companies once every quarter, so there's a kind of board that looks after the channel, that kind of thing. So it's quite formalised, but not too formalised. But effectively, that's really what we don't really want. Also, from our part of the broadcast house, what we'd like to have is a kind of unified approach from the CatEx company. So it's quite important that it's a kind of trade body initiative as well as a commercial enterprise. So what will each company get on TV? And I think this is the bit that I was getting the most questions from Jane from, and quite understandably, it's what we're doing is quite different. And I'll come on to how the rotations and everything work, so it's all very clear. But effectively what we're talking about is 3 hours of broadcasting per day per company. Now, those of you who've probably added up 8 till 10 will realise that in fact there's 14 hours a day. So what that means is that 4 companies will get 3 hours a day and 1 will get 2. That's the provisional setup. That can also divide out. We're not wedded to that in principle, but beyond that it gets a bit too complicated, and I'll come on to why that is. Each company, and we'll come on to see what Pavers have. When Pavers came to me, they had nothing. They didn't have an idea what the studio should look like, they had no presenters, they had nothing. They just wanted to have a TV channel. To give you an idea of what we do as a company, we came up with the idea what the channel should look like, came up with the idea it should look like, came up with the presenters, came up with the studio, built the studio, booked the studio, managed all the content, managed and edit the whole thing. So effectively Pavers, when you'll see the channel, all they do is deliver samples to my office. That's it. And all of you, that's all the management requirement will be. We'd like you to be very much involved in it in terms of, coming to the day when you shoot. The 3 hours that we shoot will be shot over a 12-hour day. So for each individual company, you will have your own set, with your own identity, with your own look. So it's very unique to you, that 3-hour slot. And again, your own presenters and your own everything. And all of that is included in the budget. There are no additional costs that we're coming on to, nothing whatsoever. So all you literally have to do is give us your own telephone numbers, your own URLs, and we will design everything for your approval. Once the content is actually being shot in the studio, which is done, as I said, over a 12-hour day, which is a very long day to get 3 hours out of that, we then go into post-production, which is all done in my office. We have 3 edit suites, which is about to buy a 4th to keep up with the work that we have. And then at that point, once all of the 3 hours are edited, you need to approve that content. That's the only drain on you, and it is quite draining, so it's 3 hours. But you have to do that, and we send that to you via the internet, so you get it in chunks. So if you're not getting 3 hours in one go, we can normally do about a 9-minute to 18-minute segment over a day, a finished, absolute finished, polished version, which you're going to see on Pavers. And again, we can send that to you in increments. So otherwise, it would just take too long to get the whole thing done. The really important thing, and the difference about this channel in relation to any others, is that the way that it's shot is it does look like it's live, but it's not. But everything at the moment is shot in 9-minute increments. So if you can imagine an hour clock, you basically have 6 9-minute increments, and then in between each of those you have a minute promo. Now what Pavers have done, we started with that as a format. What Pavers have done is actually drop the promos because they find they get more sales obviously out of the teleshopping bit than they do the promos. So actually what they do, they have about a minute of promo an hour, and the rest of it is teleshopping. All of this is. But the important thing about that is that each of those segments is effectively a separate program. So what we can tell from that is actually what the actual sales are by segment. So if you can imagine you have a 3-hour segment and say a third of it is working much better than the rest of it, effectively what you can do is, hi there, effectively what you can do is you can actually utilise those segments more. So effectively what we're doing with Pavers is we are optimising their schedule all the time. Now they have, if you think about it, launched with Pavers to give some scope to 24 hours of content, but they also had to populate the whole channel and it was 24 hours a day. But interestingly, the winning segments that they produced, they can use those for a very long period of time. So what we'll find is that if you have 3 hours, the reality of home shopping is only the really hardcore consumer can watch home shopping for 3 hours. It just doesn't happen. You watch it for an hour, it's quite hard work. We know that. There are some people who are very dedicated and you find they buy lots of stuff from you, but typically, because there are 22 million people watching Sky, it's quite a skating audience. And one of the things that people ask me about Pavers is, to give you an idea of Pavers, by 9 o'clock on day 1 of broadcasting, we were taking 50 orders. Right? We knew we were on to a winner straight away. And the great thing about these businesses, which is unlike probably any other businesses that I've been involved with, is the consistency of it. Once you hit a certain sales level, it just doesn't really fluctuate that much. So the nice thing about it is if it is net profitable, it will remain net profitable almost, guaranteed into the future unless absolute disaster happens. So what we're suggesting effectively, and we'll come on to the format to kind of visualise that a bit, is that each of you buy a 3-hour segment which is absolutely produced in your own brand, your own presenters, own set, own products, etc, etc. But effectively we optimise that 3 hours. Now the way that it works at Pavers, and if you're all happy to do so, is that we get a sales feed in from Pavers. We have NDAs with all of our clients and we respect it absolutely. They give us their sales data. We have statisticians who work at my end who have links. We have links out to Sky TV in my office. We have statisticians who are looking at your data all the time and optimising that if you give us the free will to do that. And effectively what that means is we can manage your sales up all the time. So if you, as I say, you have 3 hours and 1 hour is doing a lot better than the other, we wouldn't just put that 1 hour on 3 times, by the way. We'd mix it all up, because what you need to do, the clever bit about this format is it gives you the near variety, but the investment of as live. That's the kind of clever thing. So,
just to clarify, when you
yes.
say optimising, what you're looking at how the performance of one particular part of the broadcast, and then you're going to change it and amend it.
Absolutely. And what we find, for example, there's different things work at different times of day. So what we can do, if we manage to do a deal with the CatEx companies and we get 14 hours, what you'll find is meat sells better maybe at 7 o'clock in the evening does at 9 o'clock in the morning. And effectively what we'd like to do is if it was 5 companies to start off with, you all give us your data and we optimise all of you. That's the concept. So there does need to be a kind of unity behind it if you're going to get to Pavers success. That makes sense. All of the costs that we're going to come on to, which is I think quite unique, something it's all include everything. So there are no additional costs. We don't charge any management fees. There's effectively just a couple of those costs are, it's all the air time, so effectively you get 3 hours per day every day, or 2 hours for the one that gets 2 hours. We then pay for the studios, presenters, editing, compliance, programming, scheduling, sales reporting and optimisation. That's all included. So there's absolutely nothing else you have to do apart from pay the one-off bill that we'll come on to. I'll just come to I'll just reiterate, so you're getting, the price we're doing includes presenters. Now one bit that we would suggest, and what Pavers, those of you who've seen Pavers and you'll see it in a minute, is they've obviously got Debbie Pavers, who's part of the family and is also, someone else who knows shoes quite like Debbie. And she is basically featured throughout. And one of the things you do need in home shopping is we can provide the best presenters who can marvel at what wonderful goods you have and, to kind of make the whole thing kind of bump along, if you like. What's very helpful is you have an expert. So, for example, you would have someone in to come back to again, who knew everything about how the process works with the meat and the cuts and all that kind of thing, because we wouldn't know that. And by the way, if we need to pay that person as well, we'll include that within our budget. So there's no additional cost there either, because it won't be too much. But that's a very important bit of it. You need to have someone who can kind of bounce off the presenter all the time, otherwise it just doesn't really work. So for example, when I was at JML, I'm going to come on to why this is different. I was asked a question from Jane about why is this different to Ideal World and QVC. Those who deal with Ideal World and QVC, they are just like any other retailer. You supply the gear into them, they pay you 60 days, 30 days end of the month, and you have to provide a presenter with them, and it's all on sale or return. But that's exactly the same with Ideal World and QVC. It's nothing to do with what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is you have 3 hours with your telephone number, your URL, it goes straight into you, the money, you do what as you wish at the back end. A couple of issues just to tick off with Jane also, you own the programming, it's absolutely yours, you can do whatever you like with it. One of the interesting things I would really implore all of you to do is look at the Pavers TV website, it's fantastic. And all of the content, if you think about it, because it's all made in 9-minute increments, what people do is they see it on the channel, which I'll show you, they then write the number down, they go to the website, they put that number in, and they can see that 9-minute increment because it's all being post-produced, it's all there. So all of your websites, your sales will go up absolutely fantastically, and Pavers have been an absolute brilliant example of that. So going back to what the bespoke element is, you get your own, what we think would be a good idea is we have an overall kind of CatEx, or whatever the channel is called, ident, which by the way, that's all included as well. So it'll be kind of, sorry to keep coming back to you, it's the one person I know best in the room, but Donald Russell's part of the CatEx thing. But for the Donald Russell 3 hours, you'll actually have your own ident, your own look and feel, and all of them we'd like to be quite different. So there's a feeling of variety again within that, and then obviously within your 3 hours, you can do as you see fit. The bit, as I said earlier on, is that obviously it has to be fully edited by us, which is quite a big job. So if we were going to do 12 segments, you can, by the way, you don't have to do 9 minutes. What we found quite interesting with pavers is 5 minutes works really well. It actually works better pound for pound. So what that means is you can try more things. So you can try 12 things in an hour. So actually you can try 36 different product lines. And actually if you think about it from an optimization point of view, that makes more sense as well, because then you can just kind of optimize it and give that veneer variety again. In terms of the optimization process, what pavers have chosen to do, to be honest, if I was in charge of it in my days at JML, we would have optimised it a hell of a lot more than they have, i.e. we would put the winning lines on much, much better. And to give you an idea, I'm not going to give pavers sales data away, but I will give a couple of examples. There is one 9-minute segment that we did on the weekend that took £900. One 9 minutes, to give you an idea. So that's the kind of height you can take it to. There was another one that took 25 quid. Right, and obviously they don't come straight off the schedule. So I want to be very honest with you, the range. It's not like everything's a winner. And rather interesting, that one that was £900 was actually not their best seller in store. So actually what they think, I mean, I'm sure you'll find this in this business anyway, but what are your best sellers, wherever they may be, aren't always in other media the same way, and they're definitely finding that with this project. What we suggest is taking the hassle away from you and really utilising our resources is that you give us your sales data. And what we do with pavers and we do with lots of other clients is that they just give us a dial into what their sales are every day for both the web and the obviously what's coming through their call centres. And then we optimise the data and you get a sales report back every day showing you what we've optimised. Again, it's as far as, what we say, you are the client, so it's up to you. So there might be some people who just want to keep it 3 hours and trucking along, that's fine. Not everyone has to do the same thing. But what we are saying is that if you want that service, which I suggest you use, that's all free of charge from our point. So how does it work? This is a kind of slightly more technical, boring side of it, but what I've done here is, this shows an actual breakdown of what an hour will look like. So if you have an hour and it's all broken down into 12 different segments, you basically have 12 times 4 minutes of 30, and by the way, I'll have hard copies of all this, which you can all take away. So, and then you have we do 30-second promotional spots. Now, we need to decide what they are, and when I was talking about, we have a kind of board thing together, or a kind of management committee, it'll probably be a bit of all of your stuff promoting, a bit of every company, and a bit of what the concept is, a bit of what CatEx is, and a bit of history, and a bit of trust, and a bit of call centre, all the usual stuff which again you'll see on Pavers TV. But again, we would pay for that effectively from the budgets that we hopefully get. Again, this is the way that it works from a technical point of view, so you wouldn't really see any of this, but our optimising people are effectively putting this out every day. We then get the sales, we can see what's selling best, and effectively just go down and just make sure that the best ones are at the best times. Again, it's all kind of up to you what you want to do in your 3 hours, and actually what I do suggest is actually, if we do get this off the ground and the 5 companies do it, is actually not everyone follows the same thing, because again it just gets a bit dull. So if some people don't want to run promos, that's up to you, that's fine. And again, we just want to keep that kind of variety going if we possibly can. So looking at the daily format, this is the other important thing. If you look at pavers on any day, it's always different. So if at 11 o'clock every day, it's always rotating around, so people are looking at different things. And there are some people out there who are dedicated viewers who bizarrely, 4 months in, still think it's live. We know that, we get messages to that effect, so that shows what the effect this can have. But effectively, for any given company, so we can go back to Ian again. So Ian's here to start off with, from the broadcast of 8 to the last one at 9, so it's not there. And effectively what we would do is move that here on a daily basis. So effectively, Ian gets a chance to see it. Now what we would then do is then sit down, probably give it a month of that, is what pavers do. We didn't change anything with pavers for a month. We just let the whole thing go and see where it went, because then we can see where the patterns like. Then we'd sit down with you all as a team, probably at the month, and say, well, this is where your time of day will go best. There'll be a bit of squabbling, some people will want the same times of day, etc. But effectively, we'll then just continue this optimization process. But effectively, what will happen is every day is different, and that's important because all of you actually, the benefit of it is that we can grow the audience. And you can only do that by this process. So let's talk about some sales then, and this is kind of gleaned not just from pavers but from other channels. So the average sales per day on a very, very average day on a shopping channel with strong content and good back end, obviously very important, is 10k net of VAT per 14 hours. So that works out, these can be higher than this, but this is a very average day. So the sales net of VAT per trading hour is £715, and therefore for your 3 hours, for each person, you can expect to retail about £2.5 a day. So it's not huge numbers of money, but it's by the standard, and the total retail per month will be about £77,000. But the interesting about it, one of the queries I was getting from James and various other people in CatEx was, they're really concerned about what their stock holdings are going to be and was this going to eat into it and stuff. Well, I'd hope not. If it's 2,000, if you're running 36 lines and it's £2 grand per line per month of retail, this should be something that everyone can do. It's not going to kind of completely change your world in terms of the upside, but you would hope that people would have that much spare stock. If not, then they're better managing stock than I was at the moment. The interesting thing about it, however, is if you do find, and this is a really critical bit about this as live thing, if you do find that you have some really winning lines, I mean, Payleys, to be honest with you, have sold out of some things much quicker than they thought because they've just been much more successful than they thought, is actually you can use managed stock by your optimization. So you can come to us and say, a beef chop or something, it's selling much quicker than we thought we were running out of that stock. Can you take us out of that schedule? And then we can just replace it or repeat another bit of your segment. So effectively, this will not mess up your business operationally. It's something that's very controlled and managed, and that's the other rather nice thing about it. So you can manage your 3 hours affecting, according to how your sales are going, whether good or not so good.
Can I just have that?
Yep.
That sales figure you talked about.
Yeah.
Is that demand in fact? So it doesn't net off any returns or cancellations?
No, that includes returns.
So it's net of returns.
Yes. And that's a very conservative figure. I can let the cat out, Joe. I mean, if we did a weekend where we took 3p and peak or something with Joe, that figure would be 20 grand a day. So that's the kind of range. Obviously, these are figures. If you go and run to the last quarter, they'll be better than that. So very, very, very average figure. Right, so then what's the deal that we're offering? Well, the deal that we've come up with is so if we can look at this figure, sales net of VAT per hour, I would imagine most people in this room work with 50% margins, so after cost of goods, fulfillment, returns, etc., somewhere around that level. So effectively your break-even figure, just to kind of really cut to the chase, is about £350 in terms of sales. So what we're offering for this, the all-in package, is £200 per hour. So that includes all of the 3 hours production, all of the airtime, all of everything that I spoke about. So if you did anywhere near average, you should be making at least £150 every hour that you broadcast. If your margin structure is 50%, if it's not, then you need to, go up or down. So that's kind of the model. So we believe that from day one, we can make you £500 a day to make the figures round. But I suppose from our point, I mean, there's to just talk about the benefits outside of just what the numbers are. Obviously, you'll have your own effectively a bit of a channel. You can try new concepts. The credibility of owning a channel and all the PR that goes around that. But what you might really find is that TV home shopping is for you. And if it is, then hopefully you'll be coming back to us in not too long and saying you want to do your own channel. I mean, that's part of the reason we're doing this, obviously. But also, I think there are companies within CatEx, and I was saying this to Jan when we first discussed this, I mean, when Payleys came to me, and I was saying, we kept it very under wraps that we were doing Payleys, but who would have thought that we could have made a channel selling just women's shoes, really? That doesn't sound a lot of men as successful as that. And I just think there are other of these companies or ideas to be found, and I think this is a very easy way for you to enter in that. So going back to the minimum content, so if you work these figures out effectively, what we initially thought, and again this is all very open for discussion, it's nothing set in stone, we thought a minimum commitment would be 3 months, and what that means is you obviously get 3 hours per day for 3 months, 7 days a week. And then that would be, the cost of that would be, if it was £200 an hour, it works out to be 54k. Well, also, from our point of view, as you can imagine, because we have the role effectively of fulfilling this thing, You know, the nightmare scenario from our point of view is obviously we are locked into contracts that we have to fulfil in terms of the bandwidth and all the other bits and pieces. So what we'd really like to do, if it was possible, is actually offer a discount offer where you get 6 months, but you get 6 hours of programming. So it's a very linear deal, but you get a discount. So there'll be an £8 discount, so £100 for the 6 months. The timings, ideally, and again this might be a bit ambitious, it depends on how everyone feels, but we'd like to, if possible, get everyone signed up by the end of July. And the reason for that is that actually we need to produce all the content, and to give you some idea, we'd like to probably shoot all the content. We need to do 5 separate days in theory. We'd like to do 1 a week, that's about the maximum we can manage, because obviously all our other businesses to manage and paid as TV. And then effectively that would all launch at the same time on October the 1st. That would be the plan. And the reason why we chose October the 1st was not driven by our greed, it was more that we felt that was the best time of year for everyone to have their first crack at it, being the 3 months leading up to Christmas. And that is it really. I just done one of my little project plans to show what would be required. And effectively, obviously in June we come up with the ideas and talk with Jane. We're here now, so hopefully we can contract. That'll be the 2 months of production, and then we go here. Now the first 3 months would obviously be just up to the end of December. It's not a very ideal time from our point of view to start selling. Firstly, 3-month contracts at the beginning of December. It just doesn't really work. So one of the things we'd like to discuss today is I know some people have expressed to Jane, either in this room or outside it, that they'd like to do less than 3 hours. We're not saying you can't do that. What is important that people understand though is if we are shooting this stuff in the day and we're making bespoke studios with bespoke speakers and blah 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 blah, it's not very easy for us to do 3 very separate hours. So what there might have to be is some kind of, you know, you either use all the same studio or, you know, something like that, 'cause it's just not practical to build 3 studios in a day, and the really heavy costs for us are actually on the days when we shoot. You know, so when you come onto our studios, it's proper, you know, there's 10 people in the gallery, it's 4 cameramen, it's very heavy cost from our point of view, and obviously the hiring and everything else. So that's kind of where we're up to at the moment in terms of our thoughts. And I'm away for next week, so Dan Parlitt's going to be your point of contact.